Okay, here is a reaction to this video of Exoticals United. I wanted to react to a few other videos of hers. Let's go.
Hello, my beautiful. Yellowbone, redbone, butter pecan, caramel, butterscotch, toffee, mocha, chocolate, cocoa, Exoticals. Welcome to the Pretty Girl Club. Welcome to the Exoticals United community. If you are new here, welcome. Here in the Exoticals United community, we support men and women from the following people groups: multiracials, biracials, multi-generationally mixed, and light-skinned golden people. Today I'm going to be talking about how featureism affects how your skin color is perceived. I've noticed this hypocrisy in the Black community where they are obsessed with how people look. They're obsessed with your skin tone, your hair texture, and the size of your nose. Has anyone ever noticed how the size of your nose affects the skin tone that you are perceived to be? If you have more of an African Jay-Z type of nose, for example, people will be more likely to make comments like, "You're not that light-skinned." An example of this would be light-skinned Keisha or...
And anyway, honestly, doesn't, in all reality, I think Jay-Z is called brown. And look at him. I always thought this was weird because honestly, when Jay-Z is his natural color, he's the same color as Beyonce. So it's just like, to me, it's like, oh, just because you think someone's ugly, that means that they can't be light-skinned, but you're going to call Beyonce light-skinned because you think she's pretty. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I think it has to do with what you're known for, too. Like, if you're known for beauty, fame, wealth, things like that, then you get more of an idea of being light-skinned. If you're seen as, like, you're known for being unattractive, or also, it does seem like there's a sense of colorism amongst men sometimes when it comes to certain fields, as far as being seen as harder than others. So it may be that some people may even for themselves not want to push that they're lighter skinned, like in his case. That's why I think you see more often with Jay-Z tanning. And you see a lot of rappers, most of the time you'll see them more tan than their natural colors, even if they're light skinned or light brown.
Blue ivy. But if you have a slimmer, pointier, or horn African appearance, people are more likely to say you look exotic, even if you have a deeper skin tone. In fact, if you have keener features, silkier hair...
Zoe Saldana has very wide features. I don't know why anyone says that her features aren't wide. You're saying, again, this goes back to saying someone is prettier, but that her nose is very wide. She has a very Afrocentric nose. And I wouldn't say that Zoe is darker than Jay-Z. Definitely not. Zoe is actually technically lighter than Beyonce. Reason why I say this is because Beyonce wears a soft sable and L'Oreal. Well, in the same foundation line, Zoe Saldana is said to be classic tan, which is the shade lighter. So yeah, I believe Zoe Saldana is more in common in complexion with like Halle Berry, Yara Shahidi. Those are her common people that she's a similar complexion to. Anyway, continue.
And a dark skin tone, some people will refuse to call you dark skinned, and they will begin calling you by nicknames like brown skinned. They'll begin making up new skin tone categories for you. I've noticed this has happened with women like Tatiana Ali and Chili. Meanwhile, there are many other women and men with their same skin tone who are called dark skinned. An example of this for light skins is August Alsina.
Yeah, this is very interesting too. I mean, like, it's not just that. It's not just the hair texture and features. It's also other things like hair length. Like, my mother she doesn't have very long hair. And her sister is lighter than her, has very long hair, because most of the family of her family have very long hair. They have long, thick hair. But she has thin, short, soft hair, because my mother's hair is the straightest hair of everyone in the family. No, people always think that the coarser your hair is, the shorter it is. It's not always the case. Like, my mother's hair is 4A, and I'm not even familiar with 4C hair because my mother is used to being a 4A, and I'm a 4A. But anyway, the point is that her sister is darker than her, Her sister is darker than her, and she has longer hair, thicker hair. And people in her family would call her sister brown, but they would call her dark, even though my mother is clearly lighter than her sister. It's just what it is. It's weird things like that, people. And it's really weird to me. Really weird about this situation is this. When they were babies, they literally were said to be identical because they look very much alike, that they cannot tell each other apart in baby photos. You have to look at what house they were in order to figure out who was who specifically. So if they're so much alike, how can one be brown and one be dark? They're literally obviously the same color at birth, but somehow one was considered brown because of the hair texture and one was considered dark. And my mother, for reference, would be in between, I believe, Tyra Banks' color and what's it called? I would say Eva Pigford's color, in between those two, which I guess on here is considered light skin. But yeah, to me, I just kind of find it weird, people would specifically say it's based off of texture and, facial feature, but it's also based off of how long your hair is. If your hair is shorter, people are more likely to say you're dark skinned. That's just the truth. If you're on the borderline, like my mother, I guess, more brown, between brown and dark, or whatever you're going to call that color.
Yeah. When he first came onto the scene, he was wearing his hair curly and posting on Instagram, and I have never heard him being called anything but light-skinned. Meanwhile, women around his color often have other women debating about their skin tones. Many people won't admit that featureism and texturism affects how people perceive your skin tone when you're...
When it comes to men, though, people always call the people your color light skin. You were saying yourself that you're considering Michael B. Jordan light skin. How many women Michael B. Jordan's color are light skin? Or ever called light skin? I guess you could say it's rare, and I guess you could say the only time it happens is if the person is biracial. If you have someone like April Jones, they will try and say she's light skinned sometimes, just because they're saying she's mixed. They like to do that. If you're mixed, they will do that because they think mixed means light skin. Anyway.
Or woman. An example of this is Willow Smith. This is why no one cares when you call someone light-skinned who has light eyes or silkier hair, because they fit the stereotype. But if you're light-skinned with African features, such as locks or an ethnic-looking nose, suddenly people...
This isn't true, though, because like you said, with the other people, with light eyes like Jada Pinkett Smith, her daughter, or Rihanna, plenty of people are fighting tooth and nail saying that she's brown. All three of those women are brown, and sometimes they'll call them light skin. It depends, Anyway.
People want to debate about your skin tone. Like I said, some good examples of this are Willow Smith, Chloe and Halle, and Blue Ivy. The only reason people argue about their skin tones is because they have African facial features and type 4 hairstyles. I don't see people making the same argument about Zoe Saldana, who has straighter, silkier hair and smaller features. I don't see people keeping that same energy with...
Zoe Saldana doesn't have straighter features. That's very weird. I mean, look at this photo. Look at Zoe Saldana. Zoe Saldana's nose is very, very wide. Very, very flat. And you can look at, I don't really know about Blue Ivy. She's turned to the side. But you can look at the other one. I think this is Chloe Bailey. Her nose is much narrower than Zoe Saldana. So it's not specifically that. It could also have to do with, like I said, it goes back to that biracial thing. Now, I consider Zoe Saldana black, but I understand that some people will say that, oh, her mother isn't black because she's Puerto Rican, and so then they think because she's Hispanic she can't be black, which is weird. And if you look at her, she looks like she's light-skinned, but some people would say she's non-black. So I think that's more the thing there, and then also it's not just that. It's the fact that if we really get back to the background of how Zoe Saldana was treated. Actually, originally, a lot of people were claiming up and down how she was not light-skinned. She was brown-skinned or she was dark. They were pretty much trying to make her as black as possible, saying she's black, 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 dark, black, black, brown, black, black. Not light at all, not mixed, just black, black, black. Then, when she started trying to play a role of a dark-skinned black woman and actually fill in those shoes of what the people were saying she was, they freaked out. So it's like they have this whole facade of you're black, 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 you're dark, black, black, you're brown, black, whatever. But then they kind of like back out of it when push comes to shove and it has to do with, okay, let's make this dark-skinned black person represent a dark-skinned black person in a biopic. And then they have an issue. It's the same thing with Will Smith. The same thing happened. You know, people would be like, he's black and everything. And then the second he tries to represent a dark-skinned black man, oh, it's all hell. So it's a consistent thing. Like it's only a mask. You have to understand it's a mask. The reality is, if you really felt they were all the same, then you would not have had an issue with them representing something and somebody who is literally phenotypically what you're saying. It's the same. You know, if they're really brown-skinned black people, if they're really dark-skinned black people, then they should be able to represent dark-skinned black people. And they don't feel that way. They're just saying that because they don't want them to feel better than them. They feel like they're not light enough to feel good about their skin. That's the truth about the situation. And that's a sad case, to have that kind of mentality, especially when you're dark, or any mentality of that sort, and not be light-skinned, or at least I would say white would be the better option out of this if you have that mentality. It's not going to be healthy for anyone else. Anyway, continue.
Cardi B, Christina Milian, and Halle Berry, women who are within the same skin tone range as the women that I mentioned before. And
no, Cardi B is not in the same skin tone range as the people you're mentioning. Cardi B is a Fenty 300 and maybe a 310. It literally is in the records. You can look it up. But yeah, she's about 300 to 310 in Fenty. You can look up her makeup line, and you can find equivalents to her foundation as a 300 or 310. Now, Halle Berry, yes, she is pretty much the same color as Zoe Saldana, but I do believe she's a bit lighter than Beyonce. I've shown photos of it. Different lighting makes people look darker than another person, and brighter lighting. So sometimes you'll see a photo of, for example, Beyonce, and say, hey, there's a bright photo of Beyonce and a dark photo of Halle Berry, or a dark photo of Zoe Saldana, and then say, oh, these people must be specifically darker, which is not the truth, because when Halle Berry and Beyonce are standing next to each other, you can quite obviously see who is much lighter than the other, and that is Halle Berry. So, yeah, but I would say that it is interesting how people pick and choose who's light-skinned and who's not, because there'll be people who are darker than one person being called light-skinned, and another person who's lighter being called brown skin or dark skin because they don't like how they look, or they don't like them, or they're a crackhead, or whatever the hell it is. Anything negative is associated with dark skin. Anything positive is associated with light skin.
In fact, multiple media sources and movies that these women have been featured in don't even address their black ancestry whatsoever. And these women all have similar skin tones to Chloe, Halle, Blue Ivy, and light-skinned Keisha. So why is it that Zoe, Christina, and Halle have played the roles of non-black women, even though they're all within a couple of shades of each other? Well, it's because of featureism and texturism. MLS people deal with featureism and texturism more than any other group, in my opinion. And this is what black women won't admit. They naturally associate light skin with silkier hair, a slimmer nose, or maybe even a different eye color. So if you don't have these features as a woman, people are more likely to argue about your skin tone. Think about that video where Chrissy was saying the girl with the goggles was, quote, not that light-skinned. Why is she saying that? I think it's because the girl was wearing a weave, and the girl happened to not have keener features such as a white person's nose. Has anyone noticed that if you're light-skinned, you're expected to wear your real hair, and suddenly, if you don't, you're not that light-skinned? I'm starting to become convinced that anytime someone says that comment, what they really mean is, your facial features and hair texture don't look white enough. Therefore, I won't call you light-skinned.
Yeah, that is true about the whole thing about hair texture. I always find this weird, though. Why is it if you wear hair weave, people assume the hair you naturally have is 4C? That is what I don't get. To me, that's very odd, because it's like you don't know what that person's hair texture is. I've seen people who wore weaves who were 2B, 2C, 3B, 3C, 4B, 4A, 4C. I mean, like, everybody of any hair texture can wear a weave, but yet people make the assumption that if you have browner skin and a weave, you must have 4C hair. That's where it all comes from. And then, like I said, it comes back to the whole thing of having a negative view towards what you think is originally black. People think originally what is black is 4C hair. People think what is originally black is dark skin. So then they think that, if you have a weave, that's a negative feature, therefore, or a negative behavior, I guess you could say, because it's not a natural feature. Then they think that you must have, negative qualities like dark skin or, 4C hair. But yeah.
I've noticed the same hypocrisy with darker-skinned mixed people. You could have a cocoa or a chocolate skin tone, but because your facial features and hair textures are not African-looking enough, people will refuse to call you dark-skinned, and they'll start giving you other nicknames like brown skin, cinnamon, or caramel. Meanwhile, if you would have had the same facial features as Jay-Z with 4C hair, you would be called dark-skinned and unambiguous. Speaking of Jay-Z, have you ever noticed how people try to argue about his skin tone as well? Jay-Z's skin tone is also still within the same shade range as others who are called light-skinned, but because his actual facial features and hair texture are unambiguous looking, people will start a debate and they will refuse to call him by his actual skin tone. And again, the same thing happened with Blue Ivy because she resembles Jay-Z a little bit, so people won't let her be light-skinned. Another hypocrisy I've seen.
Yeah, I don't think Jay-Z is around the same color as Chris Brown, to me. The reason why is not because of his features. To me, from my perspective, I consider Chris Brown's features very Afrocentric. Now, I understand you're saying he has a septum, but he has extreme wings, okay? Like, the sides of his nose are very, very, very wide. So to me, that's not a Eurocentric nose. I remember my mother used to make fun of his nose, actually, because it's kind of wide, It might be because in my family we have septums, so that's normal for us. Like, having a flat nose is kind of odd. Not to be mean to people, but I mean, like, it's not what we're normally, not normally what we have. And if you think that actually in the sense of where we came from originally, the original tribe, because the original tribe that my mother has on 23andMe is the Fula people, well, they are specific in that regard where they are specific in the nasal structure that they have. And some of the tribes, they see that as signifying difference or distinction with themselves and other Africans or whatever. And so, yeah. Anyway, my whole point was in this was, his structure, I wouldn't say is more Eurocentric, but I would say that his skin tone is lighter. Reason why his skin tone is lighter, yes, you're showing Chris Brown in a, I think, more darkened view. But if you were to actually look at him in his normal, natural hue without tanning, He has yellow-brown complexion. It's a mixture of yellow and brown, just like Rihanna, just like Nicki Minaj, just like Halle Berry. These people have a combination of yellow and brown in their skin. Jay-Z, Beyonce, Tyra Banks, maybe even Whitney Houston on a deeper level, though. They all have a yellow, brown, and gray undertone. They do not just have yellow and brown. And the brown kind of shifts more towards brown, kind of evenly with the yellow. So it's a different concept. Anyway, my whole point is that Chris Brown is not the same color as Jay-Z, but I would say Jay-Z is definitely within the range of what people call light skin. I heard you said that Michael B. Jordan was considered light skin. He is definitely lighter than Michael B. Jordan, at least in Jay-Z's natural complexion. So, yeah. Anyway, continue.
Has anyone noticed that when it comes to who gets the title of looking ambiguous, facial features and hair texture always come into play? And has anyone noticed that the standard is even stricter for darker skinned women? For example, let's look at Ella Mai. Her facial features look very unambiguous. By the way, has anyone else noticed how they call Ella Mai ugly? Yet we're the featurists? Okay. But because Ella Mai's skin tone is very light and her hair is very silky, that is why people still call her light skin. So it's almost as if her light skin and silky hair pulls her into ambiguity. But I've noticed for darker skinned exoticals, you have to have both ambiguous facial features and a silkier hair texture, more like an Indian or a Horn African. Has anyone else noticed this? Yet we're the colorists and the featurists. Speaking of Horn Africans, I've noticed that any African person, like I said, who has both keen features and silkier hair gets thrown into the exotical category and accused of benefiting from texturism and featurism. Are there any East Africans or Horn Africans on this channel that can attest to this? I'm talking about monoracial, darker-skinned people with less than 25% non-black ancestry who are not even mixed race. But because they look mixed, because they have that silky hair texture and those keener features, they suddenly become the dark-skinned standard of beauty, aka the object of envy for unambiguous women. I've noticed the same issue with darker-skinned Dominicans as well, or darker Afro-Latinas, some who have less than 25% admixture in their bloodline. So I personally would still consider that to be monoracial. But because of the way the male-identified black women obsess over the male gaze, we all know that in the black community, West African or Bantu features with 4C hair are considered ugly. Yet, they won't admit this. Instead, they'd rather accuse anyone who doesn't have those features of being an exotical or benefiting from featurism, texturism, and colorism. Has anyone else noticed this? By the way, I know that not all people are like this, but these videos are meant to make you think and recognize the hypocrisy and the gaslighting in the black community. It seems like on average, if you have 2 or more non-black features, people consider that to be looking mixed. Whether it's light-skinned and silky hair, for example, Alicia Keys, a thin nose with freckles, for example, Christina Milian, or even silky hair and keen features. But I've noticed that if you have more than 2 non-black features, you are considered what I call undeniably mixed-looking. So once again, Alicia Keys would fall into this category. Christina Milian, she has lighter skin, silkier hair, and keen features and freckles. That's 4 non-black features right there. Therefore, I can see why there are some instances where she's playing roles where having black ancestry isn't even mentioned in the movie. Then I've noticed other women, like Rihanna, who has a lighter skin tone and light eyes and wears silkier hair textures. People don't debate about her as much because she has, once again, too many non-black features for there to be a debate. But let's say you have one ambiguous feature, such as you happen to only have a lighter skin tone, and other than that, everything else looks unambiguous, such as Chloe. Now, suddenly there's a debate. Also, has anyone else noticed that a lot of people say Halle is the prettier sister? Have you ever noticed that the only difference between Halle and Chloe is that Halle has smaller features than Chloe? Chloe has a West African Bantu featured nose and large lips, just like Jay-Z. By the way, nothing wrong with that. Yet we're the featurist. It's due to the featureism perpetuated in the...
No, Chloe doesn't actually, I don't think, have a wide nose. From what I can see, it looks like she has wide eyes. The eyes are set far apart. Now, she's wearing makeup, so it's harder to see this. But if she wasn't wearing makeup, the eyes wouldn't look as big. So the space between her eyes, when people do makeup, they try to make them... I don't do this myself. I actually embrace what I have, which is close-set eyes. I actually make them look more close-set. I don't know, I just kind of like it, so I do that. But a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people will make their wide-set eyes more close together by makeup. And then other people will make their eyes look more far apart when it's close-set. But yeah, I think that's more of what's going on there. Also, I do think that specifically, Hallie has closer set eyes, if you can see. But they both have, I do think Hallie's eyes are not close set. I think they're either in between, or they might be slightly far apart, but they're not as far apart as her sisters, and that's why her nose looks so wide. But I don't really think her actual nose is that wide, at least in my opinion.
Black community. Black people don't like their own features. They want to see keener, more ambiguous facial features or silkier hair texture.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider Christina's nose smaller than the other one, Chloe. I would actually say Chloe's is smaller. But I would say that in Chloe's situation, her septum is a bit more long, and sometimes that makes it look more like less ethnic. But more so, it's not even that. If you look at Christina's eyes, look at her eyes. The eyes are closer. They're much closer together, which Black people often think that more Afrocentric phenotype is having eyes far apart, especially eyes that look like peels. And both Chloe and Hallie have like those peel-shaped eyes. Anyway.
Do you remember the group TLC? Why was Chili considered the prettiest in that group? She was the darkest one. Can't use the colorism scapegoat argument on that one, can you? It's because Chili had the silkiest hair, naturally, and the most ambiguous facial features. Look at how her natural eyes slant downward. That is not the average West African Bantu feature. Most African Americans have naturally slightly upturned almond eyes and flared nostrils. Chili...
Really? Oh, really? They have an eyelid crease when compared to... It's well developed. Oh, that's interesting.
She has neither. She has a very bone-straight, borderline hooked nose with thinner lips. She doesn't have the average African-American...
I would consider her lips full. Especially since she's smiling, but okay.
Full lips where they kind of protrude from the side. She doesn't have the average African-American protruding, circular-shaped, pouty lips that most African-American women have. Has anyone else noticed this? This is the featureism that no one wants to talk about. By the way, when I use the term African-American features, I'm talking about the typical West African and Bantu features, such as a broad nasal tip, dark eyes, dark type 4 hair, and a dark skin tone. Don't try to comment and say, oh, Black people can have other features, because I never said they couldn't. It's just that if you don't have these features, you will often be classed as other. Also, when they do those studies saying that dark-skinned black men get longer prison sentences, this is what they studied. This is what they're talking about. They're talking about darker people with the features that I described. So don't come on my channel trying to say that I don't know what I'm talking about, because everything that I'm saying is based on actual studies. These are the facial features.
No, but honestly, with the whole prison sentences, I don't believe that that's actually because of colorism or anything. I feel it's actually off of what someone allows in themselves. You can see this in environment, and that's how you know that when they say that the prison sentences for black men who are darker skinned is heavier, it's not because somebody hates dark skinned black men. No, it's actually because dark skinned black men allow themselves so much leeway to misbehave. And the reason they do that is because of the sense of what black people see dark skin as. They see dark skin, they see the facial features of Afrocentric people. Those things that they see in black people, they equate with animals. When they do that, then they internalize it. So the man with the dark skin, with the Afrocentric features, the broad nose, the wide lips, the coarse hair, he's going to behave improperly because he internalized negative views on his own phenotype and thinks this is how he's supposed to behave. And that's why you'll see he'll be an utter mess. And that's why the judge has to hand him a very long sentence in prison. There's a difference with lighter skinned men because they're not taught the same idea, because they're taught that they're slightly less. So then they're slightly less, in their minds, animalistic. Therefore, they can control themselves a little bit more. It's terrible, but it's all a mind game that they play with themselves. It's not actually colorism. If you change your mindset, you won't have that problem altogether.
That they are studying and saying these are classed as unambiguous African American features. So if you have those features, the West African Bantu features, full nose, full lips, broader jawline, it's kind of protruding forward facing from the side, then that's what it is. Has anyone else noticed this featureism hypocrisy and how your facial features affect how your skin tone and your race is perceived? I just feel like I have so much smoke on this channel. There are so many items that I can talk about to demolish all of these semi-pro-black, aka hypocritical talking points. By the way, if you like my content, I do now have a Patreon. It is $5.
Okay, so yeah, overall, I agree with much of what she was saying on the whole thing of light skin, brown skin. I feel like, yeah, there are different reasons why people come up with someone being light skin or brown skin. Also, I wanted to add, there's also another reason why someone may not call someone light skin. If they hate, like if they went into an argument with somebody or they had an issue with somebody, they're less likely to call that person light skin regardless. Like, it doesn't matter if they're lighter than someone else, they're still not going to call them light skin. Or if their anger has gotten more over time, you'll see that they'll stop calling them light skin. Like, I can give examples of my family, for example. My dad's family is hated by my mom's family, basically. So, first off, they really didn't like my dad. And then they didn't like some people, well, they didn't like his mother, basically. And specifically, when I was younger, my grandmother was said to be light-skinned, basically. And they were like, she was lighter than my sister. She was definitely light-skinned, and she was pretty and all that stuff. And then, as time went on, my mother, she got more angry, I guess, at the lady. I don't know why. Like, she was always angry at her. But she was more angry. Because back in the old day, my mother had a fight with my my father's mother, basically. Because, not a physical fight, just a verbal fight. And she was like, she had an issue with her, and she was like, I'll never let my kids see you, or whatever. And so when she was pregnant or whatever, and when she had me and stuff, she just kind of was like stayed away from that side of the family. But the point was that as time went on, years went on, she specifically would say that she was not light skinned. Even though originally when I was like 7, 8, when I was a young kid, she was light skinned. But all of a sudden she changed colors because she got even more angry at that side of the family. And I think honestly, she got more contempt for my dad's side of the family, because for me personally, I've always been more intrigued by my dad's side of the family than my mother's side. I just have. And so, for me, I think she always had that sense of jealousy. And so